It's Chelsea.
It's Nina.
And you're in the Critics' Kingdom.
So, this week we're going to be doing Get a Clue.
Which I had the fondest memories of before we watched. It was just, I remember like this is in the era of Queen Lohan.
Yes.
And
this was like peak Lindsay.
Peak Queen Lohan.
Like it was about to, the Lohan
it was about to blow up. This was like right before Mean Girls, right before Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, Freaky Friday would come out. Like, she was about to have the world at her feet.
Truly.
For a second, before it wasn't anymore. But not to get too down in the dumps too early. So Get a Clue came out in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered really enjoying it. I didn't have any sort of particular. I was always just like, I know Alfalfa is in it
from the Little Rascals.
From the Little Rascals, and it was the first time we'd seen him since the Little Rascals.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasant surprise. Baby Brenda song again, which is always a good time. And I was like, oh, this is the other thing that I saw her in before she was like Brenda song and Sweet Life and all
as
that
Lyndon
stuff.
Tipton.
Other than that, I just, like I said, pleasant memories of it.
Mm-hmm.
But happy that I saw it again for sure.
Yeah, no, I remember really liking this one when I was younger, and I think it was again because like Lindsay Lohan was huge. Just for our generation in general, like she was it. Like she was and they were, her and like her friend group they were literally the it girls, like in the early 2000s. So I think it was, and she was a great actress. Like I think that was the other thing, is she was like so talented.
Yeah, she was my favorite. I tell you this, like we had 3 sets of twins. We had Tia and Tamara, we had Mary-Kate and Ashley, and we had Lindsay Lohan and herself.
Yeah,
and they were the twins of our generation.
Mm-hmm.
They gave us all the best. So yeah, I guess we can just sort of just get straight into
the
recap of this. So first of all, the title sequence for this is fantastic.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
we
like
get the song, the Get a
Clue theme song is still great. It's very fun.
They used to play it all the time on Disney, so I'm 100% sure
that you remember.
If you grew up during that time period, you've heard it.
You've heard it. It was on there, and they used to do the video for this all the time.
Yeah. They
really promoted the hell out of Get a Clue, I recall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if it was before or after it premiered, though. Because I feel like it premiered and it was received well, so they would
replay it.
It was a lot of replay value on this one, I believe. But after this great, New York title sequence that we get, we wake up with Lindsay Lohan playing Lexi Gold in her clearly, like swaggy penthouse New York City apartment. She wakes up with like a headset on, mm-hmm. and immediately is talking to her best friend Brenda Song, and they like get on their computer to like choose their outfits for the day,
mm-hmm.
which is just fun. It's just such a reminder of like what early technology was and what people thought it was going to be.
Right.
With their like Mac computers with like the colored backs and stuff like that, like their Apple computers. It was so fun. But so essentially at breakfast we see that her dad, his name is Frank Gold, and he is a writer for the Times, but he's reading like the Daily Examiner, and she's like, Dad, why are you reading the Daily Examiner? And he's like, well, as a good reporter, as a good journalist, like you have to sort of read everything, you have to be aware of everything, essentially giving lessons that are going to set up things that Lexi will learn throughout the course of the film. But he's like, oh, Lexi, and you have an article in the Daily Examiner. That's crazy. Like, she's all of, 14, I guess?
Yeah, 14 or 15.
I don't know, 15. I think 14.
Were they supposed to be freshmen?
They look like freshmen, but he's the editor of the paper, so maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe 15.
Let's say 9th or 10th grade.
Yeah, exactly. Early high school.
Yeah.
But he's like, wow, that's incredible. And the article that has been printed, that she submitted to the Daily Examiner for their like young journalist competition, something of that nature, is about a romance that has been unfolding between 2 of her teachers at school. So, like, it's kind of a big deal. She gets to school and everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's so cool, like, that you've been published. Also, damn, Mrs. Dawson, or Miss Dawson, obviously, and Mr. Walker, like, who knew? That's so crazy. And so for the most part, it's received really well. Some people at the school, in particular, Jack, the editor of the school paper, are sort of like, that's a glorified gossip piece. It's a fluff piece, like, that's not really news. And she clearly runs the advice column at her school paper. So, we get this whole setup of, like, all right, she's like, in theory, she wants to be a reporter and all, but she's maybe a bit more concerned with, like, the material and, like, less substantive side of life than others might be, even though in theory she's entering into this, like, journalistic path. But so essentially, after school that day, she witnesses on the stairs, and her and Jack witness, actually, because he comes up a little bit later. Essentially, what looks like Mr. Dawson and Miss Dawson and Mr. Walker breaking up. And it's Mr. Walker breaking up with Miss Dawson, and she's clearly deeply, deeply hurt by this, and she essentially, what sounds like, threatens him. She's like, you're gonna regret this, and this place isn't big enough for the two of us, so one of us has to go, and it's not gonna be me. And Lindsay's like, whoa, that was kind of wild, and Jack is like, whoa, that was kind of wild. But then they go their separate ways because, they're playing that game where they both clearly like each other and are trying to not like each other, because high school. And the next day, essentially, we find out that, again, Lindsay Lohan's dad in this is great. Frankel is great. He comes in early in the morning and lets her know, just so you're aware, your teacher has gone missing. Mr. Walker is now missing. And they found his car in the river. No body, but cars in the river. So she's like, oh my gosh, like, she's like really worried that, somehow her article has caused this. And when she gets to school, she's essentially pulled out of class by a detective on the case, who, without a teacher or parent present, mind you, which is not okay.
Yes.
But questions this small child about her article and what she knows, and, like, do you know anybody who would want to hurt him or anything like that? She spills about the argument that she saw because, kids don't, which is, what you're supposed to do, like, do that stuff. Yeah. But because, like, she just doesn't think that she's like, oh no, but Miss Dawson would never hurt him. She loves him. Like, it definitely couldn't have been her. Anyway, so essentially she, like, realizes that, like, this is, a bigger deal, and she might have gotten Miss Dawson in trouble. So now it's a thing where she's sort of determined to help figure out what happened to her teacher, because she's that kind of kid with that kind of pluck. And sort of through a series of interactions, like she tells Jack, and, because Jack is also sort of involved in this and he witnessed it, and he's kind of like, I don't know, maybe she did. And, like, that kind of sucks. So I had a relationship with Mr. Walker. He was going to help me, like, renew my scholarship and, like, all of that. But he essentially agrees with it. He's like, you know what? Let's investigate a little bit, because I actually do want to know what happened to him. Yeah. Don't tell nobody. Now, she is a 14 to 15-year-old girl, so she clearly goes and tells her best friend Jen, played by Brenda Song. And so now Jen is a part of this too, but Jen also tells Gabe, who's, like, the local school, like, videographer, like, all up in his AV, clearly, is going to be a video reporter or, like, film journalist, film creator, producer one day. And so now we essentially get this motley crew, not really a motley crew, but this group of four.
It's a random group. It's a random group of people.
Yeah, like, two best friends and the editor
and two guys.
Yeah, and, like, this dude, and they're essentially like, you know what? We are going to figure out what
happened.
What happened.
Yeah.
Now, before this, we do get a great shopping montage between Brenda Song and Lindsay Lohan, which just, like, can we just a quick note. We're gonna get into this deeper, but the fashion in this film,
it's good.
It's really
good.
It feels right. But so, as a group, they start looking into, like, various subjects, like, oh, could it have been Miss Stern, the school, like, administrative age, who always seemed to have it out for Mr. Walker? Could it be, like, all these, like, different people? They're looking into his background. And they, like, go to, like, a spy shop and, buy a bunch of, They buy a bunch of spy material, and they're like, you know what? Okay, Gabe actually lives across the street from
Miss Dawson.
Mrs. Dawson.
Mm-hmm.
This is gonna drive me crazy. From Miss Dawson, let's go and see if we can like spy on her for a bit. So they essentially decide to split up, and Jack and Lindsay are gonna go to Mr. Walker's apartment, see if they can find any info there, and the other two, Jen and Gabe, are gonna go and spy on Miss Dawson from Gabe's room because they like set up a camera outside of her thing, and she's right across the street, so they got a good feed. They're spying on the room. They spying on her. They eventually see like another teacher show up, and they're like, oh, like what's he doing here? Like maybe they conspired to kill Mr. Walker to get him out of the way, or something like that, or maybe the teacher conspired to do that. Meanwhile, Lindsay Lohan gets on the subway for the first time, which is fun. It's like a fun trope, but also entirely unrealistic because she's 15 in New York City. Like, rich or not, like unless you're the child of like a wanted, not wanted, but like a president, you've been on the subway. Like, you've been on the subway. But anyway, they go out to Carroll Gardens, where Mr. Walker's apartment is. When they get there, there's this mad shady guy played by our favorite Disney villain, Sir
Charles Shaughnessy.
Yeah, he has returned and he is in full force. He tells them his name is Detective Meanie and that he is there, sort of investigating, and he's like asking questions. And they're kind of evasive with him because they, it doesn't quite feel right to Lexi.
Yeah.
And when he leaves, she's like, dude, did you see him? Like, I've seen what a detective looks like. Look at that watch. Look at those shoes. Like, he is way too rich to be a detective. That is not who he is. This is getting weirder and weirder and weirder. So while they're there, they also see, they find a briefcase in his apartment that says, like, NP on it. And they're like, what does NP stand for? They, like, just don't know what's going on. So they end up going to dinner at Jack's house, and it's a quick thing where, Lexi now sees how the other half lives because Jack, like I said, is a scholarship kid. His brother's, like, in the army.
His mom's a nurse.
And, so he lives a different life than she does, but she's exposed to that, and, it's a whole little cute thing. They pretty much, like, through research, they find out that they figure out that NP stands for Nicholas Petrosian, and that Nicholas Petrosian is this guy who apparently embezzled like $10 million. And it seems like he like faked his death, but he died. Like, he embezzled $10 million, but he's dead. But like, they're like, why is he connected to Mr. Walker? And they're trying to figure it out. So they figure out Nicholas Petrosian has a mother who is alive and lives in Brighton Beach. So they're like, we're gonna go talk to her and see if we can get some information. They go to Brighton Beach, and they show up, and the mother opens the door, and she's like, oh, there's no Nick Petrosian here, like, go away, da-da. And then they hear from behind the door a voice that's like, Mom, it's okay, let him in. And open the door, it is Mr. Walker.
Still alive.
And essentially we learn from Mr. Walker that he was born Nicholas Petrosian. He worked in, like, essentially in, like, hedge fund investment
type
banking
thing.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs, but
he works as an investment banker.
The money. It was the money.
He was making good money.
He was making good money and living that, like, 80s Wall Street life. But then he essentially, someone embezzled $10 million under his name, and, like, the powers that be were coming after him, so he freaked out about it, and he decided to fake his own death. And he assumed the identity of a recently deceased man named Mr. Walker, who happened to have been a school teacher. So he just left and, like, assumed the identity, started teaching, but then sort of quickly realized that he actually loved teaching and has been just doing that ever since with this fake name. But once Lexi's article came out in the school paper or in the Daily Examiner, whoever it was that was originally after him is now after him again, and he had to break it off with Miss Dawson so that she wouldn't get hurt because they threatened her, and he's just now trying to, like, keep low and get out of here and, like, the whole shebang.
Die another day.
Yeah. So they're essentially like, this is injustice, and it's messed up because he can't come forward with anything because all the money's embezzled in his name, and it's just like, if he does, he's just gonna go to prison. So now Jack and Lexi, and they let Jen and Gabe know, they take it upon themselves to sort of solve this for him.
Right.
Like, we're gonna clear your name. With the help of her sister, they figure out, there's this note that he's supposed to meet someone at a hotel on a certain date with the money, and that's the only way that he'll be left alone. So they reconstruct the note using her sister's spy stuff, and then we go to the hotel, and it's just the whole ending is like fantastic. This whole third act at the hotel where it's suddenly we're in like a bottle space. All of the characters that we've been seeing are there. There's this homeless man and it was part of the reason that they knew that their teacher was maybe still alive, because when they were walking in Brooklyn, they saw a homeless man wearing his coat, and Lexi was like, "There's only one of those hideous trench coats in the
Ugly
world."
green frock.
Like,
is what she called it.
It must be that trench coat. It
Right.
has to be. It can't be anything else. So this homeless man is running through the hotel, being chased down by hotel staff the whole time.
Literally.
Intermittent cuts of that. And we get intermittent cuts of, like his mom, like Nicholas Petrosian's mom, Mrs. Petrosian moving around, of Miss Dawson they've brought there, like, of her moving around. They have her set up, like, do like a spa day situation. Miss Stern is randomly there. Detective Meany seems to be there, and her dad is actually there because he's there for a press conference. So just like all of these people who like are all involved in this similar story, but they don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them haven't met each other, and like Jack and Lexi are the only actual links, are sort of crossing paths with each other through all these like very angled stylistic shots, and it's just like this fun little bottle situation. And essentially, like, they end up figuring out that Detective Me is actually Granville, who is Nicholas Petrosian's old boss, and he's like, what is he doing here? He's definitely the one who did it.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to get him to confess it. And so it turns into like a bit of a chase between them and between Jack and Lexi and Granville. Meanwhile, the homeless man stumbles into the press conference that Lexi's dad is at, takes off his coat and his beard, and reveals that he is a city councilman that has been living as a homeless man for a month, and that there was only one man in the city who showed
cared
him
about
any
him?
kindness, and it was Mr. Walker or Nicholas Petrosian, when he gave him the coat off of his back to help him like stay through the night in the cold, harsh winter. So essentially they get Granville to sort of admit what he did, and Alfalfa stops him. He's trying to run away. Alfalfa stops him by pushing a cake on him.
Yeah.
And it's Charles Shaughnessy covered in cake, being like held, but they're also holding Mr. Walker because they're like, you did all this embezzling, da 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 da, and he's like, it really wasn't me. And Granville, because he's a Disney villain, is like, essentially, here was the plan, and I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for these meddling kids.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, okay, so you're the real villain. Cool. You're going to go to jail. Mr. Walker, you were kind enough to give this homeless man your coat. We think you're a good man. We're going to clear your name. And Granville had put all of the $10 million into a single item that he had lost and that he thought Nicholas Petrosian had, and he didn't know where it was, and we end up just figuring it out that it's actually in the brooch that his mother's been wearing this whole time that she just found on the floor. But, he goes to prison. Miss Dawson and Mr. Walker get to live happily ever after. Now it's Petrosian. Like, the name is cleared. Lexi and Jack admit that they like each other. And they get their cute little
their moment.
It's adorable. And and Lexi's like, I could maybe do this for real, and I enjoyed this, and I'm a smart, dope, cool young girl who loves fashion, and
solving crimes.
The clues were all collected, and we solved the crime.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the film.
So, for the review portion, I think overall we really enjoyed this film. It was a lot of fun. It's just like a fun whodunit, and done for kids, but in a really like it was just very well made, and you can tell that there was care put into it.
Yeah, it felt very
because it doesn't feel TV movie.
And even though it's only operating with a budget of about $1 million, which is not a lot.
Yeah.
Just so y'all know.
If you know like general movie budgets, that's indie. Basically,
it's real indie. But I think almost maybe because of that, you have that sort of indie ingenuity to it,
right?
And it just feels like they made every shot, every scene matter. Like they're not wasting time, they're not wasting money, but they're still crafting something and not just throwing it together, which was nice. Like I really appreciated the stylistic tendencies of it. I think that they did their nods to the detective genres, the classic whodunits, the little bit of noir. Like it's not noir, but a car coming out of a lake for a kids movie, that's a little dark. It has its little nods to noir. It's Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes, Clue feels, but it's not campy.
Yeah.
And that is a very hard line to walk.
Yeah, no, you don't get beaten over the head with it. It's just like, if you know it, you catch it. Like, even the detective that interviews Lexi in the beginning at the school, he has, like, one of those, like, old school, like, Poirot, Agatha Christie's, like, Poirot character mustaches. And then it's gone by the end. But it was very much, like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's, you know. And then even just the fact that by the end, they basically are, like, the Scooby-Doo gang. Like, literally 2 ladies, 2 men. Yeah. No dog, but like it's just like it's like okay, like you guys are like doing a heavy nod, but it's in a way that works very well, and it's not like you're not playing down to them for it,
which was really sort of nice to see, and it's one of those things like, oh, this makes sense of why I liked it as a kid, because it wasn't playing down to me, and whodunits are genuinely fun, as like the recent Knives Out does show,
right? And I feel like people had forgotten before Knives Out
how good a whodunit can be.
If they're done well, they're great.
They're so good. Even if you know what's gonna happen, like even if you figure it out before the end, and like that can even be part of the fun of it. Of like how early can you get the clues yourself? Yeah, like it's just it's like a fun film exercise. Yeah, like mind exercise. It's like Sudoku for film. Yeah, that's how I feel about whodunits, and this is, I think, it falls very nicely into that category. Yeah. So that was just fun to watch. And like I said, I just really, 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 like, shout out to whoever, was the mastermind behind that whole
last scene.
3rd act hotel sequence.
Yeah, and I think that is what you were saying similar earlier. That idea that if it's an indie, you have to, like, you can only use, like, 3 or 4 sets. Yeah. So I feel like it was like, okay, well, if we're going to have a point where all the characters have to interact, or we're trying to do something or lead up to that, then it's like, well, we need to do it in one space. Yeah. Because that's all we have. Like,
exactly.
Access to.
Yeah, we can't be going to all these different locations and do all these different setups.
You know?
And a hotel is smart because it's like you can... you could build like a single stage for that, but just with multiple...
With like a lobby setups. And then
you can have one elevator and change the numbers. Like you can make it work. It's a smart move. Yeah. On this budget for
very well. So well. So shout out to the director, is actually a woman, Maggie Greenwald. She's the one who did it.
The director, the art director, the cinematographer. It's like, you guys, y'all put in
the work on this one.
It's definitely appreciated. And in that vein of just like production value, I guess. Like I said, the fashion.
Yeah, no, they were serving looks.
Like, I don't know if... Part of me is like, did Lindsay Lohan just use her closet? Was she like...
Because I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm going to use my closet, I'm going to bring my own people, and I'm going to wear what I have. Because again, it's a $1 million budget. Like,
yeah. No, and the stuff she was wearing was not... Like, I'm trying to think of other Disney Channel movies of those couple years. But, like, normally the style is not up to that point.
It really is. And then, I guess maybe because it's the idea of them being set in New York and her being like a Park Avenue kid.
Yeah, she's literally supposed to be like a rich New York kid. Yeah, which you know the minute that you see the penthouse that they live in, the apartment. They have stairs. So let's just start there. They have stairs.
I remember, Chelsea, you were like, wow, that's real money. I was like, yeah, man, it's a thing that happens in New York. Like when you have that real money, when people just like, we just bought 2-3 floors of the apartment building and then just knock
connected it. Down. Yeah. With stairs.
That's it. And the elevator comes, it opens to my apartment. Right, you know what I mean? Exactly. Or like, we have an elevator man, like, you can't get access to this without obvious,
without the
distinct
key
permission.
or
yeah,
something.
It's very, and the key is a person. It's like a plug.
Right.
But it's just so like I remember when it came on screen, I like gasped a little bit. But I remember my favorite outfit in it was when they're going around Brooklyn. She's wearing these like cherry pants. They're like white pants with cherries on them.
Yeah.
And this like little like red shrug that's, I don't know if that's you would consider that artificial fur, but it's just like soft pill.
Right.
Like long soft pill, red like fur jacket. And I, as a child, was so enamored with everything that was.
Yes.
That was mine. I think, Chelsea, you said you liked the black trench coat.
I like the black trench coat at the end. During the whole hotel scene, she's like wearing this long black trench coat, and I want to say black and white pants.
Mm-hmm. With a high pony.
With a very high pony.
Just like singing
her hair, and then I think you said Brenda Song's hair, and those are just perfection. The entire time.
Like even the accessories.
Yes.
The hair accessories are just on point the whole time. It's quite fantastic.
But yeah, no, the hair is fantastic. This is, again, white girls. White girls.
Damn.
I come to you now, and I ask, please watch movies from this time period, because they were doing more with your hair, and it looks nice. And it fits. It fits. It works
with the textures.
Look in the 70s, maybe, except
Ultimate
ignore
Christmas.
that Bo Derek movie. But like
Ultimate Christmas Present, actually, we didn't talk about it, but like Homegirl
Allie
is in braids. Like
she is.
She
Brenda
has
Song
braids.
too.
Brenda Song like has her braids, but they're like braids. They're not box braids. They're not braids from the continent of Africa.
Yes.
They are braids from the continent of Europe. And they make sense.
They are literally Viking braids. Like she just has like two braids down the side.
And it makes physical sense.
Little braids.
And it looks so good. Like you don't need extensions.
Let's just return to this. It was a nice time for everybody.
Yeah, it's just, again, like just appropriation things. Just be aware.
It was a nice time for y'all
to do
in
it.
hair.
Exactly. There are ways to do it that are not infringing upon the cultures of the oppressed.
Yes.
Which makes it appropriation.
Right.
Okay?
So I would just like to say,
not exchange, appropriation. If they're oppressed, can't be exchanged.
Look at some of Lindsay's
Throwing that out
hairstyles,
there.
because she has multiple in this film
that are just,
and they're all great. She did a nice high
it.
pony. She did two of the small braids going into that.
Brenda songs, again with like some of the butterfly clips and like the single strands coming down, like they were cute.
It was a look. It was cute.
They were cute.
Go back to
they
that,
could get it.
please. Please.
I'm not as deeply offended by it as Chelsea is, but I do understand her pain.
It's rampant at this point.
Exactly. So
we've gotten past the point of me not caring.
Exactly. So just we come back to this theme a lot. Be considerate. Basic level of consideration and awareness for others. On that note, actually, I would actually just like to say something I do really like about this film is that it's weaved into it this like constant just begetting or like growth of awareness. Yeah. That Lindsay Lohan's character develops throughout the film. That all the characters do to like varying degrees. Mm-hmm. But just the sort of idea of just expanding horizons. Maybe thinking before you speak. Right. Reading a room. Yes. Like gathering information before you volunteer information. Right. Things of that nature.
To be fair, this is the time that you're supposed to learn that.
It really is. Like before the age of 10, like you're not expected to, like we get it, Like if I do something or say something around like my godson and he repeats it when we're outside, I can't be mad at him for that. He's 6. Right. Like he doesn't have a concept of like what's the appropriate time to say this when third. It's something he's gonna steadily learn. Once you hit like 11 to 4. That's when you're getting to the age where it's like, I need you to...
You need to, like, read a room. Know how to read a room at this point.
My mother would say, watch your mouth. Like, just learn how to sort of carry yourself. Yeah. Again, with awareness and consideration of others.
Which Lexi does learn at, 14, 15. Which I'm like, that's, for where you are in the world...
Yeah.
Sure, this works as long as you learn this before you go off to college and inflict it upon somebody else. But she does learn,
and she
that.
takes the lessons humbly.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I like that it's not a situation where you're watching somebody push back and be like, but why aren't I allowed to do this? And like, why is it bad for me to say that I went to Hawaii? Like, that's my experience. That's my thing. It's like, but you could have asked him if you went to Hawaii.
Right. It's
you didn't have to just immediately be like, oh, I love staying at the most
specific hotel.
At the fanciest hotel on the island. Like, you don't have
Where
to do it like that.
Where did you go to? And it's like, girl, you know that this man is clearly living in, like, a much different class than you. His mother is a nurse. She's a single mother.
He doesn't pay, like, he's on scholarship.
He's
That's how he
literally
can
on
afford
scholarship
to go to your school.
And you're
like,
aware of that. He's not going to just be jetting off to Hawaii. The better question would have been like, oh, have you ever visited your brother who is stationed in Hawaii? But her being like,
yeah, so she's, and again, like, all right, fine, like, you didn't know that.
Right.
You made a mistake, but now I would be very surprised if she doesn't do that next time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Now it's like,
so
noted.
She takes the lessons in stride.
And moves
And I think that that's a very good lesson for people to know and understand. That you don't have to be defensive when people call you out about being wrong about something.
Honestly,
sometimes you're wrong.
I wish more people experience this at this age, because then you wouldn't come into the world and be like 25 and still be just saying wild shit. And you're like, how did you not realize that? How to read a room, like just basic. How
did we not get here at some point earlier than this? And I'm saying this as someone who loves to be right. And will tell you, I will definitely say to you that I am right more often than I am not. I genuinely believe that. Chelsea, you don't have to agree, even though I know that you fundamentally do in your heart of hearts. But, even in that, like, I'm still going to sit here saying, like, but when I am wrong, and, when someone tells me I'm wrong, like, I take it. I'm like, okay, you know what? All right, let me reevaluate. Let me go back to the drawing board and see what I got to do. So just, that's something to do, and that's okay. And even that leads to another thing. Like, even that is a part of being, like, a fully confident, self-aware person.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware of your own flaws, and that you can have flaws, and that, like, there's room for improvement at any turn around the bend.
Right.
But another thing in this film that I really like is the fact that these kids are everyone really in the film.
Yeah.
But in particular, it's, like, nice seeing all these kids who are all quite confident.
Yeah.
And not in a sort of overbearing or arrogant way.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that tinge to it. It's literally just they're secure kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jack, a.k.a. Alfalfa, is not... Because really, I really want to call him Alfalfa. Like, that's who he is.
Because he's Alfalfa.
Always be. He got fined, though. I remember being little and being like, Alfalfa?
Yes.
Who saw that coming?
His real name is Bug Hall. Fun fact.
I do remember like seeing that other thing, be like, his name is Bug.
Bug
that's
Hall.
Why you want to call him Alfalfa.
Yeah.
It's great. He's got all these little funny names. But yeah, like he's a scholarship kid, and he's not running around sort of like coming at anybody for like, oh, you're too rich and da. But he's also not running around like doing that like false peacocking thing where it's like, I'm better than you because I work harder than you. But he's just like, I'm on a scholarship.
It just is what it is with him.
It is what it is. This is the situation. I have to take certain things into consideration. I have to take certain things seriously.
Right.
You don't have to take those things seriously. And therefore, I may or may not want to be around you.
Right.
But, like, I'm not going to tell you. But, like, I don't really care if you change.
Right.
I'm going to do me.
Right. I think he realized
like that.
I feel like in his situation, he just realized very early that life was not fair. And then as soon as he went to a school, which we're presuming is a prep school of some sort, like a private prep school, he was just like, okay, life's not fair. I'm going to be going to school with a lot of rich kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to be ashamed of the fact that, like, I'm from a single family home and my mother is a nurse and she only makes X amount of money and I have to be on a scholarship. Because why am I embarrassed about that? That's my situation. They can't change theirs. I can't change mine.
And again, like, and you've earned this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't have to be embarrassed about something that you have earned.
Literally. Yeah,
like,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Your ability and your work ethic have gotten you to a point where this school is willing to give you a scholarship to be there.
Right.
So.
Right. Exactly.
Go ahead. Live in that truth. Mm-hmm. Embrace it. Be your full self. Even my girl, not even my girl, Brenda song, You
We
know how I
love.
feel.
We love.
But, Brenda's like, this whole scene where, she essentially just says something like kind of vapid and like off point and like, and even her best friend is like, Jen. Oh,
Yes, Lexi gives her this. Lexi gives her this look like, Jen, please shut up.
Oh, like, oh my god.
But that doesn't deter
exactly,
her.
just like, whatever.
She's
Like,
just like, okay, I just say some dumb shit sometimes.
exactly, or like, I'm trying to contribute,
which
like,
most kids do. Like
exactly,
again, and
it's
I think that's a very important thing to learn, because I feel like that's how a lot of kids get quelled very early. Is they just learn that they can't say things that aren't always correct.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you are 14 to 18, most of what you say is going to be incorrect. Even now at 26.
Yeah.
I'm still incorrect. Like
exactly.
Like, so it's just one of those things. I think it's very important for kids to learn to just always be confident in yourself, and then, hey, you've got a right to be wrong, A.
Yeah.
But B,
I mean, don't take that too
no, don't take that too far. But like,
because
everybody's wrong at some point, because nobody is perfect.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't let that like lower your confidence or your self-esteem if you're just wrong, and like probably
or
just as much as other people
to be
are.
wrong is it's a learning
It's
opportunity.
normal.
It's a normal, and it's also
Yeah.
a learning opportunity. Like, if you're if you're willing to accept that, like, you might not have the most up-to-date information on something, or that you just approach
Right.
something in the not best way, if you're willing to hear the criticism, take it, adjust, and move forward, even if you're not perfect the next time, like, it's that adjustment and moving forward. Like,
Right.
that's the big part of it.
It's like the duck, water off the duck's back type of thing.
Yeah, and even the way of, like, I remember my mom always telling me when I was little, her, because I remember there was a point where I would come home and I did fairly well on like tests and stuff when I was a kid. And I would come home and there was a point where I kind of would get upset with my mom, because I was like, well, you always only asked me about like the 5% I didn't get right. You never talked to me about the 95% that I got right. And she essentially said to me, she was like, like, growing up, like, I used to do well on tests too. She was like, but I'll tell you this, can I tell you, when I get a test back, because she was in school while I was a kid, she was still going through like her higher education, and she would tell me, she's like, when I get stuff back, I look at my paper and I probably don't remember most of the things I got right, but I'm always going to remember the ones that I got wrong, because I look at it and I check it and I say, okay, like, here's why I messed that up.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I see what the correct one is. She's like, and that's always I've always remembered the ones I get wrong. And I think that is sort of a similar concept, just off the page and in real life,
Mm-hmm.
in situations and interactions. Like, remember the ones you got wrong, and that will help you get more right next time.
Yeah.
So that was just, it's a nice
You
little...
know. Just find that you're inevitably going to be wrong at some point.
Yeah, and what I like, I think that ties into the whodunit genre, generally speaking.
Right.
Because it is a genre that is sort of all about that.
Yeah.
It's a genre that's like equally about trusting your instincts and following your instincts, but then being able to self-correct when your instincts go against like the logic or the existing
Evidence.
There we go.
Evidence.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to be mutable in that way in order to arrive at the real answer, to get to the truth beneath everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a cool... I think that in every aspect of this film, that's weaved in very nicely.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
And I also just like the fact that they show that just because you're interested in things that are deemed to be dumb or vapid doesn't make you dumb or vapid, because that's literally just what society has called it. Like, the fact that Lexi, she loves fashion, that's just her thing. But on the other side of that, like, Lexi also seems to be very smart. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, that's just again, it's like you go into the whole, like we talked about with High School Musical, the whole thing where people are interested in more than one thing.
Yeah.
And just because they like something, that does not make them like, just because they like one thing does not automatically label them as something. And I think she's a great show of that, because her fashion and jewelry and accessory knowledge actually ends up helping them, because she's the one who identifies the diamond that's in the brooch, because nobody else would have known that. But she's just like, I just know luxury items.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's what I'm interested in.
That's what I love. That's what I'm interested in. I like to serve you looks while also being smart and investigating. You know, she's just like, I like doing all these things at the same time, and I should be able to because why not?
Yeah, and I think in thinking about the references too that this film is clearly picking up on, like this was that, you know, like clueless
Yeah.
sort of like Legally Blonde. Like this was that era of taking that trope of like the vapid sort of valley girl or the vapid rich girl or you know whatever, and like turning it on its head and being like, well, there's value to be found in essentially the idea of there's value to be found, as you're saying, like in all amassing of knowledge.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if your interest can like having knowledge about a specific thing can become very useful in certain situations. It's not necessarily about that knowledge that you have. It's about having the skill to apply it.
Right.
And trusting the instinct to apply it.
Right.
And like having the confidence and like this is what I know.
Mm-hmm.
But here's how I can use it. Like that's where the ingenuity, the cleverness comes in. Is wielding the tools that you have.
Yeah, and I've always enjoyed that because I think there is very much a demonization of anything that's inherently feminine and fashion and accessories and all of that kind of stuff. Even gossip is like seen as something that's inherently applied to those that identify as women. And therefore it's automatically seen as lesser than.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this right now, you know, Herodotus wouldn't have had no histories to write if it weren't for gossip.
Right.
Like, who do you think, like, that's just tea spilling.
Literally,
that's all that is.
The funniest thing about, like, people always ascribing that all women do, gossipy women, all of that, is that men are the worst gossips. They love to gossip. And have you guys seen Girlfriends? William is the messiest person on that freaking show.
He is the messiest person on the show.
But I think even in life, like, men gossip all the time. That's all they ever do. They love all they do is gossip, even if it's not about their friend group. What do you think you talking about sports is? You were gossip. Oh, you know, I heard that he got traded. Gossip. Gossip. Like, I'm just like, men always gossip. And it just like irritates me that it's just seen as something inherently less than and worthless because it's tied to an idea of femininity. So I just love that this movie turned that around and is like, no. Just because old girl likes to look nice doesn't mean that there's nothing in her head.
Exactly.
Because Jack assumes it too.
He really does.
But it's like she basically solves the whole thing that gets Mr. Walker off, but then B is also the only one that spotted Mr. Meany Detective Meany as not being a detective because she's like, I recognize that AP. That shit ain't cheap. That's a 20,000 watch on that man's hand. He could not afford that if he was a police officer.
In what world?
In what world?
In New York City? You are out of your mind.
Even if he's the police commissioner, I don't know if he can afford that.
You are out of your mind.
She's like, this doesn't, like, it's not adding up. And it's like, you need somebody who can tie all these things. And it's just those types of things that are... It's just demonized, and I like that they turned it around, especially because fashion history is so important. People just like
it really is.
People just like try to like put it into this box of like, oh, that's like stupid like women gossipy stuff, and it's like no. Fashion is very important.
And like like it's just we could
go on a whole rant about like fashion history because we both are really interested in it.
But
that could be for another day.
It is, but it is deeply. It's important. It is one of those things of I'm not gonna do my deep anthropological that I could do, but it's like there are certain things. You know, like when you were in social studies and you learned that certain things were like necessary for human survival.
Yeah.
And it was like like food, shelter, water.
Right.
And then like this is the one that you realize as you get older when you do like me and you do like anthropology and classics and all that crap. And it's like. Storytelling,
right?
Like learning is very important to you because we produce very stupid, incapable offspring who can't fend for themselves for years, which is not conducive to a species surviving for an extended period of time. But but they learn. That's the thing. Then they exponentially can do better than every other species because they can learn. And stories are very important to that. And so it's sort of funny that like these sort of things, like when you think about it, it's like. Things like fashion, they develop out of things that are needs. Like they develop out of this combination of like clothing, right? Of like clothing and shelter. But mixed in with these concepts that are important to the human psyche in development of like identity and like tribal marking. You know what I mean? Like, we know that we were making jewelry before we got out of Africa.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, before any type of migration, people were creating these identifying markers, carrying certain things, being buried with certain things. Like, all of this, it's part of the human story.
Right.
And it's arguably more part of the human story than sports is. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's somehow seen as, like you say, as lesser than. Gossip is a part of the function of storytelling. It is a part of the function of collecting information, storing it, reciting it, giving it back to the community so that we can all like continue to grow, learn from the mistakes of others, teach our kids,
Right.
do better create offspring that can do better the next generation. Like, these are all parts of the actual machines of humanity's survival and humanity's development. And it's just like, it's just funny how like they really are treated as deeply lesser than, as deeply nothing, as without substance. And I said cooking, like food, with that too, because I think we're now in a place where cooking is getting sort of back to that point where we're starting to look at cooking and looking at specifically like cooking that's happening in small kitchens or, you know, in home kitchens, and getting back to respecting that in the way that deserves to be respected, and develop small cuisines in the way that deserves to be respected. But all of these, like, have typically fallen under the blanket of like women's things.
Yes. Quote unquote women's
in the
business.
West. In the West. In other places, it's not really that cut and dry, because
it can
you
vary.
can call it enlightened if you want, but you know, like
it can vary.
I'm not trying to find, but enlightened
in the Western world, and we're including you, Europe.
Exactly. The West, the capital W West. You know, these things fall under. They get really gendered, and it therefore diminishes their value when it's actually, you literally wouldn't be here without it.
Right.
So there's
mitochondria again.
Girl, let's talk.
We
could talk about mitochondrial DNA. We could do it.
She shows up again.
We could talk about it.
But just a few errant notes.
Powerhouse of the cell.
Just a few errant notes before we kind of, finish it off. We love that her dad is so involved.
Yes.
He's a really involved father.
Frank Gold, like...
He's actually cares about his daughter. Like, because you have to realize... So her mom is there. Like, her mom is actively in the family. But she's on a business trip the entire movie. So we only literally see her at breakfast in the beginning.
One time.
So the rest of the time, it's literally her dad caring for her and her sister. And her dad is, like, legitimately involved in her life. Like, he comes to her and he's like, hey, I know I missed dinner, but let's talk about your article now because I had a chance to read it and I want to critique it and go over it with you and tell you what you could do better and what you did great. Like, it's
like, that is such a... That's such a great parent.
Literally.
Like, it's one of the best... Might be the best parent I've ever seen on Disney.
Yes,
like,
thus far, I would agree.
Outside of, like, Mufasa. You know what I mean? Like, just so like, thoughtful, so clearly caring. It's just involved.
Very involved with her and her
And
education.
it explains why Lexi is able to
empathize,
to take criticism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's clearly, for whatever things she still has to learn, she is clearly a capable, rightly confident, kind child.
Yes.
Well-intentioned child.
Right.
And that's just like...
She's a good kid.
She's a good kid.
Overall, I would say she's a good kid. And I think, like, the last errant note that we have was just the fact that Jack, Buck Hall really committed to sounding like an extra from Gangs of New York.
And I don't understand. I'm from New York. I can't do that accent. Like, real talk, I don't...
Like, he really sounds like when you think, New York accent, that's what he sounds like.
I was like, bro, like, this is not 1922. Where are you going?
Where are you going?
Where are you going?
But he literally got
and your mama don't sound like that. So how you
set in New York City? And he was like, I'm doing a deep dive.
Exactly. I'm going to create a character for you.
He's like, what do they sound like out here in Carroll Gardens? Also, love the fact that essentially Miss Dawson and Mr. Walker were in a long-distance relationship. Because default. Carroll Gardens to East 86th Street, that's long distance.
And let's just be very clear. This is before the F and G train were popular.
Yes.
Like, that is something that just happened.
Uber was not a thing because it was 02.
Yeah, and we can talk about it just happening too another time.
But yes, as New
a story
Yorkers,
about
I don't
that,
know
but-
I don't know how to equate it if you aren't
Yeah,
in
it's
New
really
York,
yeah,
but just know that they're not.
that's love.
They're not close.
That's true love.
Like that's like
That's
going
a
from a
trek.
town to another town. That's like an hour easy on the subway.
Yeah.
Like easy, and that's assuming that they're actually working correctly that day, which
Yeah.
never
You
happens.
gotta transfer.
Yeah,
It's too much.
it's a lot of work. But yeah, so I think overall, do you think you'd show this one to the babies?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be fun. It'd be fun. It's just, like it's a whodunit you can watch with your kids, and it's still enjoyable to
Yes.
watch. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fun. Let them do a little Sudoku while it's like when you give them vegetables shaped like other things, like when people like carve fruit into other things, like make them think they're having like a fun time while they're getting something good for them.
Right.
And you can also have a fun time as well. I do like that that like following your instincts part of it and like taking critique like is good, because I do think generally people should follow their people should follow their instincts, but
With caveats.
with a caveat. People who if you have never been accused of being a blankist, follow all your instincts. If you have ever been accused of being a blankist, do the exact opposite of what your instincts tell you to do at all times. That's that big caveat there. But yes, generally speaking, like follow your instincts, trust yourself. The two big ones, that are sort of in all kids programming. But then it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to get it wrong the first time. Try again. It's okay to put the pieces together and the puzzle's not quite right.
Right.
And try again. And like I said, whodunits naturally do it, and this is just one for kids, and it does it really well. And I would love for my daughter to be like, can I be like, can I go as Lexi for Halloween and wear those cherry pants and that little red shrug? Because I would, if I cannot find it for her, I will take a sewing class and I will make it for that child. I would do that for her.
No,
it'd be great.
I completely agree. I think it's a great one. It's also just a great whodunit to start off with, because I feel like kids get it early with like Scooby Doo, because that's still kids watch that now. So because they just keep making new ones with newer animation.
I have no idea how they hold up though.
Yeah, well they make like new animation versions.
Yeah.
So it's like new things. But yeah, but I'm like, kids are generally introduced to whodunits fairly early, so I feel like this is a fun like live action one to get them into.
Yeah.
And then introduce all the other ones after. This is just a fun one to start with, and it's just enjoyable.
It's easy. It's Lindsay Lohan in her prime.
Right.
And listen, just a quick Lindsay Lohan, if you're listening, you're not. I know you're not. But if you are, the odd chance that this reaches your ears, like, this is a genuine, like, there is support and love for you. Like, I would love to see Lindsay Lohan back on screen in full potential. Just realizing, like, that prowess that we saw from Parent Trap through Mean Girls, through Confession. Like, just what we saw was there. Like, if at any time, like, I'll support you getting back on the screen. Forget Georgia Rule. We can erase that from the canon. But I will support that return, because I do think that, that's a talent that I would.
A true talent.
An
icon,
talent
honestly.
an icon that should, whose comeback I would love.
Yeah, agreed. So I think with that, guys, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.